welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I'm your host John and I will not be doing the podcast this week. Instead, I will be eating apple pie in a shooting range, or whatever it is we Americans do.
Well, thanks, John. Sorry that you're skipping out on another podcast, but thankfully I'm here because I'm dedicated to our fans. And once again, I brought a guest host with me, and I didn't have to reach very far. Podcasting live from my fantastic studio is my brother-in-law, Billy. Billy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah, so you're catching up in the standings. This is, your third time on the show?
Something like that.
And only one of those times we have recorded proof of you talking to John. So, you know what? We've spent a lot of time this season knowing what I think of this season, which is not a lot. I started out, I think, cautiously optimistic, hopeful, and then clinging to some hope, and then I just cratered. And I'm not a big fan of this season. I will say that it has gotten out of the cellar. This is not Nicaragua, because there's been good episodes, and that didn't happen that season. But what are your thoughts? How are you on the season going into last night?
I think my attitude toward this season has basically mirrored popular opinion. All Survivor seasons start okay. No Survivor season has a bad start to it, really. And then there was those Then there were those middle episodes. But I feel like you're right, this is an okay season. Probably a little too many average to below average players, but there's no one who's really hateful, which I think is what you really need for a truly terrible season. And the gimmicks of this season hasn't been of the depths of Nicaragua or Fiji, where they just they take those average casts or below average casts and drag them even further down. So it hasn't had that.
Yeah, and also I just think at this point, Survivor is just really good at what they do. They screwed up casting. It was a mistake, and John and I have talked about it. I think a large of that is that it's hard. So getting one person, getting two, much harder. This very episode, we said goodbye to the dullard Alec, who was really only there because they wanted Drew. And I thought Drew was actually really good casting in that he played an excellent fool. But then I'm like, okay, you'll be our backup Drew.
Yes, the shadow of the fool.
Yeah, so that's why the season hasn't been successful, but they still know how to string together a story. They still know how to design an episode of television. The editors are still top-notch. So I think at this point they know how to provide some entertainment. They can make lemonade out of lemons. But for me, and what we do here in this podcast, and the sort of Survivor fan I am, it can only be so satisfying if you feel like nobody is really guided by intelligence. And I think there's been a bit of an over-exaggeration in that respect. I think people are so frustrated with the season as a whole that they're not giving anybody any credit other than, and we'll get into it, Natalie. But, yeah, I mean, we're not going to come out of the season thinking that was a genius player, even if Natalie wins, I think, at this point, because I have some thoughts there. But kind of appropriate. We're talking about a blood versus water season. You and I are kind of like family, right? I mean,
we are family.
That's right.
We're in-laws. We actually have in the English language, you are my brother-in-law.
That's
vice
right.
Versa.
You were there wearing a tux at that ceremony that made that complete. They haven't had in-laws in a blood versus water season, and I was thinking, should they? And then I was thinking, if you and I were on Survivor, and I'd totally vote you out. There's no question. It wouldn't even be hard for me. I don't even know if I'd ally with you, to tell you the truth. I mean, look, if it suited me, of course, swap, merge comes, my alliance needs an extra number, I'll bring my brother-in-law, but don't worry, I can vote him out at any moment. You are my primary alliance. So.
Yeah, the great thing about you and me, if we were on a season of Survivor together, is we don't look particularly alike, so, I could, pretend not to be, we could just pretend not to know each other.
Yeah, they'd be like, and you are? And your relation?
And you'll just pick whoever's voted out on the other teams. Yeah, we were related.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it would be a little difficult to vote you out, because for one, I do know you as a human being, and I like you. You're a great uncle to my sons. You're welcome on the podcast. And then, I'd have to come home and answer to your sister, but, I think $1 million would dry our eyes pretty good.
Also, you would have to, if you did vote me out, you would have to win it. You can't just, vote me out at 6, get voted out at 4, and
Well, I'm planning on winning. Now, how about you? You'd probably vote me out, right? I feel like you would target me.
I could definitely vote you out.
So maybe that's why they don't do in-laws, because it's probably even like worse than like Jervis and his niece. When it was like, niece, I've got 50 nieces. Who cares? And then of course it could like we get along. You're a very helpful young man. Certainly, if we were on a tribe, I would get you to fix a shelter. But imagine if it was like a mother-in-law, son-in-law. I'd be like, we got to get this chick out of here. She would be targeting them like Natalie and John, which is my transition. We had 2 episodes last night, and you know what? Not a whole lot happened. There are things. We've got a whole numbered list of things that will carry us through close to 60 minutes, I'm sure. But we'll start at the end because this is the one worth talking about, and let's talk about Natalie. I was on record last week as saying I was a big fan of Natalie. It wasn't just that she was the best of a bad bunch, but I think she's actually a legit good character, and I still believe that. I'm still a fan of Natalie. Her victory would make me happiest and most satisfying, I think, at this point. But I think she messed up bad last night. Well, what do you think?
I think you might be right. I think she might be kind of getting the Spencer edit. The stalking horse, the person who's the plausible winner who just doesn't quite clinch it. And I'm starting to feel like when she tells John to play his idol, that might have been her move. Like, they've been, Survivor is always a lot of what ifs, and there's always that moment when that person, the third or second place person, has their chance to take out the winner of the season, and they don't, and that might have been Natalie's chance to take out John. And if something that appears to happen in the preview for that episode happens, that could mean there's only 2 more chances to take out John, and one of them he'll have an idol for.
Yeah, last week I supported that, because to rehash, it kept her from being in a tie situation for the very first vote, and that was useful. But I mean, she had it set up, and I was excited. I with a caveat, I actually didn't think John was in legit trouble. But her moves were great. I think I wrote in my notes as I was taking them during the episode, like twice, probably one for each episode. Natalie's awesome. I loved what she was doing at the reward. I loved how she set up this final 3 alliance with the 2 most testable people there. I loved that she was then chumming up with John and Jacqueline, but ready to twist the knife. Like, just fantastic stuff.
Well, chumming up with John and Jacqueline so she can twist the knife.
Yeah, I'm A+. I love that. That's the Survivor I like to see. But, it happens. John won immunity. It's too bad. I actually do think her plan probably would have worked if she would have been able this timing. But then, so it doesn't work. She can't vote out John. And instead of just accepting it, she decides to save Keith. And I think that was possibly a fatal mistake on her part. I understand the logic. She wanted Keith around to be able to beat John. She needs John to lose an immunity. And Alec isn't going to do that. But it's too late, Like, her whole plan was Alec, Keith, Baylor, me, that's enough. I can get John. He won't suspect a thing, and he wasn't going to suspect a thing. But you're losing one of those numbers. She no longer has a majority without Missy to be able to vote John out. So if that's your loss, you just take the loss and wait for the next opportunity. Mm-hmm. Or if you're going to just go for it, if you're going to betray the alliance, then no half measures. You got to go all the way, and you got to vote out Jacqueline. What do you think?
I think you're right. Again, in the moment, you can sort of see the logic of everything that she does, but it's kind of counting on her, John just not turning on her right away and just voting her out and saying he'll take his chances with Keith, for example. And I think we haven't given John enough credit because John seems to be, I don't want to bring up the Tony game, but the Tony game seems to be, if I could sum up Tony's game from last season, it was a high level of risk combined with he picks his targets, he takes them out. And John seems to be doing that. Like, he saw Jeremy as a risk, as a target. He took him out the first chance he got when he decided he was taking out Jeremy. And Natalie isn't in that spot yet. But if John decides he needs to take out Natalie, I think he'll take her out sooner than later.
Yeah, and she now put the target on herself. Now, she has an idol. So, that does allow for a little more courage in gameplay. which, again, might be an argument why you target Jacqueline. But, like, I'm not sure what she accomplished other than alienating John and possibly Missy. So it's like she might have lost the ally that, by all indications, was ready to go to the final three with her. And that wasn't just in What Made the Air. It was also in some stuff on CBS.com. Like, Missy said, I want to go to the end with Natalie. So I don't know why you blind side people like that at Tribal Council for so little reward of, okay, Keith instead of Alec. And then there's also, Keith is a threat to win a jury vote. Alec is not. So I think the move there was to just cool your heels. Recognize that you missed your shot and keep your options open to be able to take the next shot. And, barring what we think might happen from the previews, the next shot would have been the very next Tribal Council. I think she still had one more opportunity to blindside John without him being tipped off and playing his idol. Mm-hmm. She would have needed Missy. But, maybe you can get that. But now that you've shown to Missy that she's not, a part of your plan, that you're out there, and now that John is, notices that something's up, and we'll probably be able to piece it together.
Yeah. Also, one thing I liked about Natalie saving John at the previous Tribal Council was, from Natalie's point of view, John is a reliable alliance partner in that he won't screw up her game inadvertently. Even for Jeremy, he was a reliable alliance partner until he decided to vote Jeremy out. That's just the game. Whereas Keith has proven himself not to be a reliable alliance partner, and especially this late in the game where Keith literally screwed up the best chance he had of winning by inadvertently mouthing off at Tribal Council. So Natalie has saved this unreliable alliance partner so she can take out, the reliable alliance partner who wasn't looking to take her out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Natalie's subterfuge is now predicated on the ability of Keith to play up long. That doesn't sound good. And, I understand why you'd want to take the shot early. Here's, a question point. Was she even right to want to take John out in that episode, And I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
I think, we've been saying it since LJ last season. When you're going to take a shot at a power player, you take it as soon as you got it. As soon as you got the shot, take it. Even if the stars aren't aligned perfectly, get rid of that person and figure the rest out.
Yeah, I think John's taking out Jeremy, prime example of that.
Yeah, and again, Tony, LJ, Aris in the Blood versus Water season before. So yeah, I think getting rid of John this episode would have been fantastic for her, especially because with each passing day, Baylor's resolve to not do what her mom says may fade. So, but you couldn't. The shot wasn't there. And so if it's so important to you to weaken John, keeping Keith isn't going to do that. Then it's Jacqueline. And why do you think she didn't go after Jacqueline?
I think it's the problem is Jacqueline is the weaker of the two of the pair. She has less chance. Any chance she has of winning any immunity, for example, Natalie seems to have the edge on Jacqueline in that regard. And Jacqueline does not have the idol. So if you take out Jacqueline first, I think is probably her thinking. It makes it twice as hard to take out John. You'll need another Tribal Council to take him out. Except, problem with this is, does Natalie know? Yes, Natalie does know John has the idol. He did tell her. So I think that's probably her thinking. If you're going to take out one or the other, you have to take out John first, and then you can take out Jacqueline.
Yeah, I think that's the thinking, is that taking out Jacqueline is all-out war, and now John knows, and you can't blindside him or anything like that. But I kind of feel like she started that war anyway. So, and that's what I was getting at half measures. It's I think the right move would have been no move. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to make a move because she seems so tunnel vision focused on John, then you have to take out somebody important to John, because at least then you weaken his strength. He's no longer 2 votes. He can no longer flip around and do something to move against you. Now you have Alec, Keith, yourself, Baylor, and Missy will probably move into the fold, because what's she going to do, die on a hill with John? No. So there, you've taken over the game, and now, yeah, to your point, you need to 2 opportunities to get rid of John, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to do that, then you don't do anything. And I think she got caught up in the moment. She got caught up in the fact that she was just probably so amped up to make a move that she's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And maybe Probst talked her into it at Tribal Council when, he's been pushing everybody. This is the time to make a move. You have to make a move. You have to make a case. And, that's all well and good, but she doesn't. She wouldn't need to make a case to win that jury over. She just needs to not have John there. And maybe she might even be able to beat John. But all she would need really, to guarantee victory, she would just need to remove John. And anybody else that's left over, she beats. And plus, taking out John at any point between now and the final 3 would be the big move. Taking out Jacqueline would be the big move. Keeping Keith isn't nothing. Switching her vote, and the only way she backs out of this is if she can convincingly play dumb enough. And maybe that would work, because John has shown a tendency of wanting to believe things are going well. But it's just such an unnecessary risk for so little reward. And it does call into question how great a player she's been.
Yeah.
There's been a vacuum. So any level of ability has, probably lets us overrate her. But maybe she's just a tactical player. She knows how to make this move. She knows how to do this one thing. And, in a Jeff Kent type way, she is just focused on John, not even so much on winning.
Yeah. And you got it precisely right. Like, this was a move that has some risk, no reward at this point. The only reward is if Keith can beat John. And even then, I think at that point, Natalie herself is, just hope you get lucky with the challenge and you yourself can just take out John yourself.
Yeah, and I think she made a few other mistakes this episode too. So yeah, which again doesn't necessarily make her a bad player. Doesn't even necessarily keep her from being the best of these bad choices. But there are mistakes, and we need to call them out when they happen. The first, when they, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but when they were doing that reward challenge negotiation in the first episode, I feel like it was Natalie was the one that was directing it. I think it was her turn to swing the axe, and she was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Which, that moment was great gameplay. It showed that she recognized that this is Survivor's way of destroying alliances, and she wasn't going to play along. But it seemed like she dictated that, Missy would win, or at the very least that John would go to Tribal Council, or Exile Island. That's the one I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. If your entire focus is getting out John, how do you send him to the place of idols?
Yeah, I think the problem is, though, if she doesn't send, I think who does she send then?
Herself.
Herself, that would be it, but that would also isolate her, not a good thing, but it would also make her look maybe too strategic, trying to get to the place of idols. Because I think that has to be going through everyone's head. So I think...
But she'd have 2 idols to get her all the way through.
Yeah. Well, the real answer, too, is you would send... If you say Missy wins the challenge, you would send Baylor, except...
Missy would never do that.
Yeah. And then Jacqueline, even then, Jacqueline would probably be the next choice. But I think, again, she's still just one voice in that, and you don't want to go against the group consensus, which is we'll send the big, strong guy. He can take it. Because that seems to be the big thing about Exile Island. And this almost always happens, too. I think Gabon is notable for that when they say, we'll send the dumbest, weakest person we think, or who we think is the dumbest and weakest here to Exile Island. Whereas almost all of the Exile seasons, they're always concerned with the fact that, they'll be weakened for the next immunity challenge, which... I think this season was kind of noble. Jeremy looking really, really weak after his stay. But aside from that,
Wes
no one ever really
week as
seems
well.
to.
And so I agree. I'll forgive the John move there because it was kind of a group consensus thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't totally her idea, or she knew that would be where the wind would blow. But then she actually wins the next reward, and now it's her pick to send people to Redemption Island. And if the edit is to be believed, at this point she does not know John has an idol. So how do you send Alec? She found out about John's idol while receiving the reward. So unless, and again, we don't know. Maybe she basically figured John had the idol. Yeah. Maybe she just thought so little of Alec's ability to get it. But yeah, if your first one is not, you don't care, I mean, it's you have to send John.
Yeah.
At that point, you need to still protect it.
Yeah, so in that case, I guess, you can't so nakedly crave the idol or idol clues, so you can't send yourself in that situation, which I think Natalie was perfectly aware of. And like I said, I think these people are savvy enough to get that much. Like, you just can't send yourself. And I think if you're trying to take out John in this case, of the two you're going to send, you send Keith to weaken him for the challenge, but so she sent Alex, which I think was probably the better choice if that's your thinking, to keep Keith strong enough for the challenge, for the immunity challenge. But I think you just can't send yourself unless you think you're being targeted, which is what previous Survivor players have done when they've sent themselves to Exile Island.
So there has been one person that volunteered for Exile Island this season. Oh, yeah. Well, one of them was Natalie, and that was when she first came on a radar. Like, hey, look, she's a player. No, look, I mean, she wasn't going to send herself there, but and when it happened, I was like, okay, well, then she just must know that John has the idol. And then, send somebody else. Don't punish one of your own team members. It was why John had to vote out Jeremy, is because he sent Jeremy to Exile Island when there wasn't an idol there. But I almost just think that she had not taken idols into consideration with the two decisions about Exile Island. That's a flaw. That's a mistake. We assumed that there would be one on Exile Island, and you should too.
It just seems like this. Like, again, this cast, they're concerned about Exile Island is the isolation and weakening people for challenges, less for the benefit of getting idols or idol clues.
Yeah. But I will say that until that final moment when she flips to Keith, I was so on board. I mean, not just because I already was, but I was like, man, she's doing great. And then it was just kind of like, shucks, that's too bad. But it was like, great episode for Natalie, and then it just all fell apart. And I almost think like she may have cost herself a chance to win. Now, she does have an idol, just like John, so it might just be who wins that final four.
Because I think that must be her thinking, like, take a small risk now with flipping her vote to keep Keith to theoretically save, to take John out. But she has that idol in her back pocket if she needs it, if John turns on her immediately, if that alliance turns on her. So I think this might be a good move in that you have to take risks at some point. At some point, it's either be quiet, shut up, and just go with the flow with the alliance and get booted out before final tribal council, or just take a risk. And I think I'm personally inclined to think you should probably take any small kind of risk if you have to.
Yeah, my point is,
the question is, did she have to?
Yeah, she didn't have to. For one, because again, Keith instead of Alec. Woo. But also, I'm not sure that she would have been taken out. I think she had a fairly good path to final three with either side. And, she had set up her preferable path with, Natalie and Baylor. Or no, so she is Natalie. Baylor and Missy. I think that John and Jacqueline were destined to be 4-5. Like, I think this is one of the scenarios where she should have just been Sophie. She should have just let things happen and not made the moves. Yeah. And a lot of people won't respect that as much from our end, but it doesn't matter. Like, Sophie never had to make the move because she's like, dude, I'm winning. And I think that's where Natalie was at, but she wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about, making John pay for Jeremy's removal. It's like, Jeremy's removal was great for you, Natalie. Don't worry about that. You've recovered.
Yeah. Also, the great thing about Sophie, too, I think she had enough belief in her own abilities and chance that if she had to go head-to-head with Ozzy, which she ended up, it ended up going on her with no help from anyone in that challenge where they so could have helped her, where they were actually interfering with her ability to win that challenge, interestingly enough. I think Natalie is, fit enough, smart enough, she could probably just beat John outright herself, and you just have to take that chance.
Yeah, and, that chance, whether she flips her vote to Keith or not, she'll need to, voting out Alec isn't voting out John. It isn't even damaging John. Voting out Jacqueline would damage John to a degree. She just, I think she wanted to do something. She needed to she was probably tired of sucking it up. And it was like, this was her time to set her plan to motion, and then she's just like, well, I'll do something. And I think it's going to hurt her, or at least it could, if not for maybe some twists and turns that could happen. All right, so that was the big part of the episode. Now let's go back to the beginning. And we touched on this for a bit, but the first action of the double episodes was the reward challenge. They had shown this in the preview, and at first it's like, yeah, it was the show the pecking order challenge. And, to their credit, and I think, I'm comfortable in saying to Natalie's credit, they recognized this, and they didn't fall for it. They took out the 3 guys, whatever, no big deal. And then they weren't going to play Survivor's game. They weren't going to show, who's on the bottom and who's not. And that pissed Probst off, and that was kind of fun.
Oh, yeah, Pissy Probst is maybe not the best Probst, but it's up there.
Yeah, and there's been more Pissy Probst this season because, he, like us, is not very happy with what this cast is doing and the television they're creating. Like, he's seeing it in live. It's like, oh, work with me, do something. Like, he had to pry the idols out of their hands. So I kind of like that he was just like, screw this. If you guys aren't going to really play, then we're not going to do it. Because I imagine that, indecision and all that lasted longer than what we saw. And there might have been a little bit of cut and let's talk about this and you guys better start doing something, and they still weren't. So it's just like, screw it. But at the same time, I'm not faulting them. They hacked the game. Survivor was trying to mess with them. They were trying to get a row 2-4 situation going. They didn't.
Yeah, well, the best Survivor challenges are challenges where there's a clear solution, and the best Survivor challenges are the ones that you can break. And I think they broke, this kind of challenge in some way.
Yeah, and part of the flaw is Survivors. It was too genteel. People have been talking about this on the boards, and I agree. It was just like random trivia about people, and everybody but like Keith was getting the questions right. I was getting the questions right, and I haven't been paying attention to these people that much. It should have been the old one where they pull everybody aside, take a survey, and then answer. Some of them are great, and that tells us a lot. Like, you don't just need the pecking order to show what's going on. The answers will do it. Both the answers that Jeff says are correct and the way people are guessing. And they've done this in the past, and I feel like, cannier players, I kind of feel like, Boston Rob and All-Stars, if I'm recalling correctly, just answer randomly. Like, they're not showing any of their cards. But this group would have. Maybe not Natalie, but they would have, and that would have been interesting, and that would have prevented them, I think, from throwing it, because bad feelings would have bubbled up. When the question would have come out, who was the most useless, and it would be unanimous Baylor, and everybody would have guessed Baylor but Missy, and I actually think Baylor would have as well. Sparks would have flown, like, that would have pissed Missy off, because we've seen she doesn't take that very well.
Yeah, also I think Jeff's whole pissy thing too, like, he's trying to rush them into making a decision. Which I think happened.
Yeah.
Don't give people time to think. Make them pick a winner. Pick who's going to exile. And I think to Jeff's credit, it more or less worked the way he wanted the challenge to work.
All right, so Missy was left with the choice of who to take. First choice is easy. She takes Baylor. Some people are like, oh, you don't need to take Baylor. That's the one, ally that you have. You don't have to worry about. But I think you have to take your loved one. I think anything but that is just, people would see through that. And also, I think it's like a free pass. If she only gets to take one person, nobody in the world's going to resent her for taking her daughter. That's just the easy one. No, you could do it, and there's no loss. And this season, as many seasons before, have shown that try to be selfless does not work. People recognize, oh yeah, sure, you're giving up your reward for me. I'm going to vote you out. So I don't have a problem at all with her choosing Baylor. But then the next choice was between Natalie and Jacqueline. She chose Natalie. What should she have done?
Well, I think in Missy's case, she should have played the mom card. So I choose Jacqueline. But I also, Jeff, let Natalie take my place. Like, I think of these as daughters, these people as daughters to me. And it just, I would love them to have their fun. I don't need to. Like, that was her ideal best choice. Play the mom card, and people would be like, well, she's a mom, she has daughters, like, she's far from home, even with her own daughter, they can understand that, and it doesn't reveal anything about the dynamics of the alliance.
Yeah, and even if, they don't, they see through it a bit, it doesn't leave anybody there to talk to those guys.
Yeah, and you're not, and also Jacqueline and Natalie aren't going to conspire with Baylor right there to, vote out Missy, and they're not going to conspire about voting out, John, which is actually what happened.
Yeah, that would be a canny move. There's no chance or percentage in any way that Missy was going to do that.
Well, again,
Missy
Jeff rushed the decision.
Yeah, and even there, Missy's been pissy about rewards for a while now. She's like, oh, it's so sad that my mom doesn't go on rewards, which is why I believe they gave her the reward last week. Despite how this one turned out and the minimal blowback from Jacqueline, she was pissy that she wasn't chosen by Natalie. It's like, you just had a reward, woman. You just had an overnight stay. So that was never going to happen. So at that point, yeah, your choices are leave Natalie, who does seem to be the bigger gamer, who probably would have got it. But at the same time, she might be the bigger risk to flip. Whereas Jacqueline was easily the one that was going to take greater personal offense to it. I don't think there was. I mean, she was the one that took this whole game turned on her taking personal offense.
Yeah, and Natalie comes across as like Sandra, who has admitted she would wake up on Pearl Islands and curse out Lil to her face, who still took her to the final tribal. And Natalie comes across like she can be quite insulting or mean to people, but they don't take offense to it, and therefore, and also the inverse is true. You can be kind of mean to her, and she does not take offense.
Yeah. So I think it would have been probably better for Jacqueline in terms of blowback. But at the same time, I don't think there was much Jacqueline could do. It's like, is she really going to flip to these three dudes again? And what's interesting is, by all indications, maybe. But that's where the John-Jacqueline thing is. And I think if you're Missy, you probably trust your relationship enough with John to realize, yeah. And she, I don't think, have put any of this calculus together in the moment. But the threat of John flipping on her is pretty small.
Yeah.
So it's the thing about rewards, though, There's often no good choice. So all you can do is try to take the least damaging. Or the other thing you do is don't win rewards. Be the person that gets taken on the reward. Don't be the taker. Don't be the chooser. Survivor messes with you. Just ask Dawn, who solidifies her relationship with Brenda, chooses her, and then is forced to give it up to everybody else.
Yes, many a Survivor game has sunk or floated on choosing who to go on rewards.
So yeah, don't win them. They're tempting. Oh God, you need food, but again, you might get taken, and nobody resents the person that was taken. I mean, look, if it's everybody's taken as part of an alliance that you thought you were, then that's dangerous, and obviously. That's burn people, Pearl Islands, Palau, but just don't be the person that chooses. Don't keep other people from eating. Don't keep people from their loved ones, especially the loved ones. So that's reward challenge. They send John to exile, and of course he finds the idol. And this has led to a little bit of belly aching amongst the fans, which I think a question for this season, and just in Survivor in general. Are idols too easy to find now?
Yes and no, in that maybe you want found on the second clue, but also we want the idols to be played, and if they're they have to get into the game to be played, and we're far away from Yule moving a ton of sand on Cook Island to find his idol, to just flipping over a rock, but I think from the perspective of the audience, we want these idols to be found, so just make it easier.
Yeah, is it easier than it used to be? Hell yes, of course it is. But that's by design. The idols as an instrument of the game and as an instrument of drama are only dramatic if people have them.
Yeah. The one caveat I would put about this is if it's on Exile Island, maybe make it harder since only one person has access to it. Whereas if you're hiding it in the camp or where it's available from the camp, make it easy, where everyone theoretically has the same chance of finding it, clue or not.
Yeah, and I think with this case and with Exile, especially this past two with John, they want that idol in play now, especially this one. They don't have time to wait for that second person. It's that they'll run out of tribal councils. The only reason to put an idol back there is to get into play right away. And I think why it's not as hard as it was, Micronesia, where they had to go through 5 different clues and get a cave, is they probably rightly decided that hunting for idols solitarily, one person, not very good television. So it's like Asker it. We want it to have, we'll put it somewhere, it's a little bit out of the way, and, whoever gets it, gets it. It's almost the reward for going to Exile. Whereas, they have drawn some good television out of ones that are hidden in your camp, most notably last season, where it was the Mad Treasure Hunt. But yeah, if it's just one person looking, it's like, I don't want to spend that much time with the person on Exile. So, hand it to him. I don't care.
Well, in that case, why don't they just put the idol in the vase and screw, don't bother with the clue anyway? Is it just like an intelligence test? Like, if you can find this idol, good enough.
Well, I will say that Jeremy couldn't. Now, obviously, he couldn't find the Exile one because it wasn't there, but he didn't find the one Keith found either, and it sounds like he's just not good at finding things.
He also might have overthought it, too, as a fan of Survivor. Like, they're not going to make it that easy. Like, it sounds like he said on his exit interview, like, he dug, like, a, foot-deep trench that's like, it's like, he should have just been running over it with the stick.
Yeah, whereas, I leapt out at Keith.
Whereas literally Keith and John Rocker, they didn't overthink it. It was just take a few steps, move stuff around.
I think we can safely say that neither of those overthought much. The last thing I'll say about, this kind of feeling out there that these idols are too easy to find is it seems that these complaints come up a lot when people who the general audience may not necessarily be fans of are the ones that find the idol. I'm not sure people were all that upset when Spencer, had an idol literally placed under his napkin, and he was the one who found it. It's like, yeah, Spencer, but then they're like, Tony's like, oh, they're just handing them to Tony. Whereas in reality, it sounded like it was like really freaking hard for Tony to find the idols he found. He just was always on it. But last year they were complaining, oh, it's so easy for Tony to find these idols, because they didn't want Tony to have the idols. So now they're complaining it was so easy for John, and I think it was easy for John. But it's because nobody wants John to have the idol. If Natalie had found, if she'd gone to Exile and found it, I don't know if we'd be getting a lot of complaints about how easy idols are found. So I don't know. Check your biases, people. But I guess that, yes, they're easier to find by design. They want idols out there, they want them in play, especially at the stage in the game where if they made it hard to find, then they basically wouldn't be found, or at least they wouldn't factor. If you want to question why do we need a second idol this deep into the game, I'm okay with that. I don't know if we do, but I think for this season maybe they do. So that's my stance on idols for now. So the next big thing of that episode, which was such compelling TV. John gets back from Exile, and now it's a big fight. Jacqueline wants to talk about her new ideas presented to her by the people on the bottom of the Alliance, and John does not want to hear it. This will be a fun discussion. Who do you think was right in that little fight?
I think probably Jacqueline. Like John was just being like, and also Jacqueline too. Like it's just one of those. They just clearly did not take the temperature of the other person before having a conversation and spoke about the wrong things. And so I can go either way. I think I'll go Jacqueline's side. Like, John, don't be pissy. Listen to your girlfriend. Talk about what she learned. Like literally, like this is a conversation that's gonna happen. Just have it.
All right, so this is going to be a fun thing that I'm going to do for our audience, and especially for you. I'm going to talk about relationship dynamics, because I've been married for over 10 years now. So it's fun for you, because I'll be talking about fights with your sister, which I think is probably just at least a little more comfortable than talking about all the times that we shared a bed with somebody, which would also be pertained to this episode. Whatever. Spoiler alert. Those somebodies would be your nephews.
I know where your first nephew was conceived, so we've had weird conversation with this kind of stuff.
Only your sister. I would not share that. Couples do this all the time. And who's right, who's wrong? Neither. No one. All that happened, is she wanted to talk to him. She had all this information. She'd been away from him. There were things bothering him. He did not want to talk in that moment. He had just spent, a night or two on Exile Island. He was probably very tired, very hungry. All he wants to do is just chill. And she's coming at him with this information, and I think, if you want right or wrong, John was right. Her information was stupid. Reed's made a great point, and they want to work with us. Of course they want to work with us. They're trying to stay in the game. Doesn't mean they're not going to vote us out. Why would we flip on an alliance made of people who we've formed some relationship with for somebody we don't? To his point, it's like, I already know what they're trying to say to you. But that's, of course, the exact wrong way to do it. And you don't flip out on somebody, it's your point, with that level of annoyance. But the only times you do that with people are the people that you're closest to. And so it was just typical couple stuff. And it's kind of interesting that we're seeing on Survivor, but like anybody who's been in any kind of relationship for any long time has had this argument like dozens upon
everyone
dozens
gets these
of times.
petty conversations and petty arguments, and I personally enjoyed this on Survivor a little more just because it was so petty.
Yeah, and it was just that thing. And I've had it many times. And honey, I love you. You're listening to the podcast. You're wonderful. I get home from work, back when I used to do that sort of thing, and I'm tired. I hate my job. Not anymore, because I don't have it. The commute sucked. I just want to rest for a second. But she's been, and she works too. But say this is a day she'd been home with the kids, and she's just all stuff. She's just waiting to have like a real conversation with humans, or waiting for a break from our monster children. Which, flip side, I'm experiencing now. It's just like all right away, and like I don't want to hear it, and I might snap at her. And now she's angry because I snapped at her because I was wrong to do that. And are either of us are going to let go of that? Not right away, no. There's probably going to be a fight, and the fight is meaningless. And eventually you get over it, and that's what you saw. Should John have snapped at her? No, of course not. Should she have, been dithering around and trying to change her opinion and worrying about this? No, that was bad Survivor play. And to the point of like this is the same argument the couples always have, just about voting people out instead of the conversation they had about that crazy chick at work. I was worried just watching this would lead into a fun discussion with my wife. And she's like, see, John apologizes right away, and I, being the canny, long-time married man, I said nothing. I just let it float. Sorry, honey, I'm very busy watching Survivor, taking notes for my podcast. But what I wanted to say is, and look how well that's working out for John. Maybe apologizing right away isn't that great a thing. But to give John some credit, he did recognize that his approach with Jacqueline was wrong, but it was too late, and now he needed to pay the price because Jacqueline was also equally in a bad mood. These are two people who were, at their worst, which, that's what you get out of couples. You get to break down into, temper tantrums, and that's what we were seeing. What was kind of interesting from a Survivor perspective is everybody else has to live with this. It's like hella awkward, more awkward than this conversation.
It was kind of great watching Reed talk around the fact that these two people are having a fight, which could decide his position in the game, and he has to deal with them having their petty BS.
Yeah, and so was there something else that Reed could have done better than what he did?
No.
Well, let me get into a reader mail from our friend Brian. And we just call everybody who sends an email a friend. You're a friend now, Brian. Thank you for listening. Reed's pitch to Jacqueline to flip doesn't really benefit her at all. Either way, her and John are the pair partnered with a threesome and in trouble when they get to 5. If I'm Reed, I pitch her vote out either Keith or Alec, then next vote flip on the girls and vote out Missy or Natalie. That way, her and John aren't outnumbered in the new alliance, and they are in the power position at Final Four, and they get to choose who to bring to the end with them, or even vote out one of themselves to guarantee jury vote. Doesn't this seem like a much stronger argument to make?
I think the problem with this argument is it's true no matter what Reed does. It could just very well have been Keith giving her this spiel saying, we'll vote out Reed this round, which happened, and then you can flip to us and we'll blindside Missy, Baylor, whatever. And that's the problem with Reed's approach. He doesn't need to be there for this to happen.
Yeah, I think the question, is there something else Reed could have done? And I think no. I think he was drawing blind.
Yeah, I think the only thing he could have maybe done is save this conversation for tribal council and try to blow up tribal council and hope someone makes a blind vote. that Jacqueline is so pissed off for whatever reason that she just votes for with Reed and, preserves him. Because, Reed wants to get further in the game. That's what he wants. What he's pitching to Jacqueline does not necessarily need him to be involved. What he needed to do is blow it up at Tribal Council and hope someone, is pissed off and angry when they go in that voting booth. And, that just wasn't going to happen before Tribal Council. Because most people go into Tribal Council knowing what they're going to vote, and it's really difficult to change your vote once you're at Tribal Council.
Yeah, see, Reed was kind of whining. It was, oh, poor me. And look, I get, how this must make you feel like, I need you guys to talk. For one, he was always making it about himself. Like, I just need to know, this is really tough on me. Well, I don't care, Reed. We're planning on voting you out. But more, I think his best bet was to keep them fighting. Because what he really needs is Jacqueline to be so pissed at John that she's like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to show him. And John, to be like, the only way I'm going to end this fight is to let her get her way.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying not to make this a gendered conversation. It could just as easily go the other way. It just so happens that in this scenario, it was Jacqueline and John. I'm not trying to buy into the fact that, irrational woman and all of this. I think she was wrong from a gameplay standpoint. And part of it was not because she's a woman, it's because she was bitter that she didn't get taken on a reward. And she even made the confessional. It's like, maybe I'm just bitter. It's like, no, there's no maybe here, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
And that's not because she's a woman. This happens all the time. It's so easy for us to sit there and say, you don't take this person, you need to take that person and leave that. You don't need to take your ally on a reward and all that. And Stephen Fishback has pointed out the only reason why they're allies is because you reaffirm your alliedness through things like rewards. Like, people resent that stuff all the time. So that's why she was angry, and that's why she was susceptible to the other argument, just because she wanted to eat. She wanted to ride some horses, but probably mostly eat.
Also, problem for Reed, too, is the two people he wants fighting are a couple. Like, they've had these fights before. They're going to have them in the future. Jacqueline is probably sitting on that bed knowing this is a stupid fight to be having right now, that that she's going to go back and make up with John. Like, that's just how these things work. As opposed to two strangers having a same stupid fight, that could work for you. Whereas, this is John and Jacqueline. They're a couple. This isn't new to them.
I will say that my biggest laugh of the entire evening last night was the 5 hours later cry. It was like, oh, wow. But, I've been there. Probably not 5 hours been there, because, frankly, I don't have that much time. I'm not sitting on an island. But at some point in there, you're still fighting, you still want to win, and then you realize there's no win here. This is stupid. But it's like, I can't be the first. Or how can I extract some level of win? And eventually, if you're in a good, healthy relationship, you realize there's no win, and you just both apologize and forget about it.
Especially as Jacqueline's approach to John, what she wanted to tell him, it was the kind of information allies want to tell other allies in Survivor to talk you out why this is not a good idea.
Yeah,
Jacqueline probably already knew this was not a good idea to flip to Reed's side, but needed to talk to John to reaffirm that this wasn't just her lack of food-addled mind telling her this is a bad idea. It's actually a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think she wasn't necessarily married to the idea. It's just, I can see where John was coming from. He just, he's like, I just want to hang out with my girlfriend. He just needed a minute. He needed to decompress a bit.
Watch his face.
Yeah, he really needed to watch his face. He was looking like Matt Damon in Courage Under Fire. Like when the... like third act Courage Under Fire. Poor guy. Not his most famous role, so some of you guys might need to look it up.
That's heroin addict Matt Damon, for people wondering.
So that's where it just came from, and that's where a lot of couple fights just come from. You just approach them when they're in a pissy mood, and you're the person that they get to strike back against, because they can't do it with their boss, they shouldn't do it with their children, they can't do it with their coworkers. Unfortunately, it's you. And by strike back, I mean say something bitchy. I don't mean strike. So, but getting back to Reed, I think the only hope he would have had is just the anger would have led them to a bad decision, because to your point, they only Reed for Brian's plan. But also, Reed is the most dangerous player out there for them. The very fact that, he can, come up with proposals right there just reaffirms that. It's like, no, we can't work with Reed. Maybe we could flip. I don't know why there'd be an enticement to flip to Alec Keith. But, no, Reed's got to go. Reed's only, so Could he have done something better? Maybe for our sake, for an optic standpoint, sure. He could have made a better argument, but there was no argument to make to succeed. The only thing Reed could have done to stay in Survivor was win immunity. He was too big a threat. He needed to be removed by all parties involved besides, the powerless Alec and Keith. All right, so it looked like Natalie's plan was coming together. At any point in that episode, did you actually feel like John was in danger of going home?
No.
And why not?
I think we haven't pointed this out yet, but this was basically a pair of pagonging episodes, like two people who you would expect would be the ones going went. So and the episodes themselves at no point really made it seem as if John was in real danger. The only time he was in real danger was the second episode, but then he won immunity and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a deal.
Yeah, for me, I love Natalie's plan. I really thought it could succeed in a theoretical sense, but Survivor is also a television show, and I was basically, as it was coming together, and I felt like it was a successful type plan. I was like, oh, okay, so John wins immunity then, because this wasn't John's final episode. This was Alec's final episode, and I thought that was telegraphed fairly early on in the episode, and that they let Alec talk, and that's not something they want to do. Because he doesn't offer anything. And
he didn't come across as a raging a-hole for once, so...
Yeah,
okay.
But I think he was the first person to speak at the beginning of this episode, which was, cut right after Tribal Council. And they got a couple more points in. It's like, okay, well, goodbye, Alex. Or Alec. So, yeah, I didn't think John was going home. So, as that was going, that kind of tinted my perception of the episode. It's like, oh, poor Natalie. This is so great! But then it's like, well, maybe she can still do it. I wasn't, not this episode. It looked like Jeremy was going home. He didn't, but then he did. And, that gets to my earlier point. So I want to throw in, I was not worried about John. In fact, when this episode was over, I put in my notes, congratulations to John Mitch, winner of Survivor San Juan del Sur. I thought this episode clinched it, that he is our winner, and I very little doubt. However, that does not seem to be what people are talking about, and that baffles me. I thought it was so clearly edited as the winner of this season in these two episodes, with maybe a couple little caveats that we could get into. And nobody seems, people are like, I still think Natalie's going to win. Keith has a good chance of winning. Is it just that nobody wants John to win? Is that why people are just refusing that reality, or what do you think? Well, Who do you think is going to win the season?
Well, I think, for ranking it, John is number one with a bullet.
Yeah, I think I have him at 90% chance. I'm super confident that John is winning. I put Natalie at 8%, and then Jacqueline and Keith can each be 1%, and Missy and Baylor are 0.
I personally would go as high as 90%, but I feel like John, Jacqueline combined, they're at 90%. It just feels like there's no way one of them isn't winning this season.
Yeah, see, prior to this, I had their odds kind of intertwined, mm-hmm. But this is the story of John Mish. This is what this season has been about, or the second half of this season. Even when they were talking about their lack of uterus troubles, John was the one that got introduced that. It was presented through the frame of John's story, and then she got to fill in. Last night, it was, the story of his father. They gave him, a 2-minute segment on frickin' wine. Now, here's the couple caveats if you guys really want to clutch on to the idea that this relative dullard is our winner. When he was giving that, heartfelt speech about wine and his father, Survivor immediately cut to a confessional of Natalie talking about, this guy's an idiot, I'm going to get rid of him. So there's that. And then when he does it again at Tribal Council, they undercut it again with Keith. But that was live in the moment. That wasn't an editorial decision. I don't know why Survivor gives him that much time to talk about wine, because it wasn't interesting. If they weren't building his character, because they are building his character because he's winning. And you say, well, they were also building Natalie. She got lots of time. All of Natalie's recent talk and confessionals, while awesome, are about John. This is the story of John Mish, because John Mish is winning this season. Yeah. And if the only way that it isn't possible is if they're setting up just an awesome takedown. But I don't feel like they're setting him up to look bad. I don't feel like they're setting him up to, I think I think he's winning, folks,
Yeah.
and I don't understand why everybody else isn't just saying that.
I mostly agree with you, but some points against that, I think people have been really leaning heavily on Jeff Probst saying, this winner has a unconventional winner. And John seems to be the most conventional of winners, especially through the Jeff Probst man prism.
You say that, and like he's certainly conventional in many ways. Like he's conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
He's conventionally American. But like, who's his comp? Like, he's not a savvy. Like he's got some like savant qualities. He is picking up on things. I've been harping on this to the point where people probably think I'm like seriously pro John, but it's more like, yeah, he's got a little more intelligence.
Well, he's
than
clearly
you guys
a fan, but he's not our kind of fan. I think that's what we really can't get past. He's a fan. Like, my mother's a fan of Survivor. She's not our kind of fan of Survivor.
Yeah, she might not even listen to my show. And I'd vote her out too, by the way.
Thanks.
Honestly, for her own sake. And I wouldn't even like. I'd have to expend too much game capital to keep your mom in the game. But
also, the second point for why John might not be the winner is Jacqueline gave a confessional about how she feels like how he gets in his head like he's got it in the bag, and then he drops the bag and he's devastated. Like, that's one small, like, and they do put in these episodes when Jacqueline says, and that, you know, maybe he does drop the bag, like he's the winner, he is the front runner, and he screws it up.
Yeah, no, they're kernels, and like obviously like he looks like a guy that could lose it at any time because he's nowhere near a great player. If and when he wins this season, I'll be ranking him in the low 20s of like winners if we ever get around to ranking it. But like, yeah, to go with convention, like his type, the kind of the bit of a meathead, I'd say he's above average meathead in terms of intelligence. The sort of bland, there hasn't been many, like, I think his comp is Fabio, who is about as unconventional a winner as there's ever been.
I think Aris too, for that matter.
Yeah, but Aris is kind of a bright guy. But yeah, I mean, Panama Aris, maybe he's kind of along those lines.
I think
Jeff Probst doesn't think very highly of Aris as a winner either. He's
also,
like
I think,
most boring winner ever.
Yeah. Also, I think again Aris, we've heard him on podcasts. Like, for our kind of fan, Aris has probably higher capital than what is actually on the TV show.
Yeah, well, especially Panama Aris. I think current Aris is fantastic. But I didn't know that until I listened to Rob as a podcast. We didn't get that from Panama. So, yeah, if you're hanging on to that, I think John can still qualify. I don't think he's disqualified by that comment in the way that, maybe Jeremy and Josh were. Just because you could just early on, John Mish did not feel like a winner. He did not feel like a presence on the show, and he wasn't until the swap happened. But, yeah, I would be shocked if he is not the winner of this season. And I guess the one more thing you can hang on that is, might have said the same about Josh and Jeremy. So maybe this is just a season of them shocking us. But it feels like it's a little late in the game for that.
Well, just like late in the game, logistically, like there's only 3 more tribal councils where they can get rid of people.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, they're like, how is John not proceeding? Like and we talk about this a lot, and why you do want to take out the power player when you have the shot is because sometimes there's one shot and you can't, and that might have been tonight. And again, that might have been the story that they're pushing. Is you don't need to win all the immunities, you just need to win timely immunities, and maybe he did. Maybe he needs to win one more, like Final 4, but that might be actually the only last one he needs to win, because at Final 5, I think we can safely assume that's the last time people get to play their idols. It's been that way for quite some time, even if Tony pretends the opposite. So we're at Final 6. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then, Final 5, he plays his idol, Natalie plays hers. The only thing that people call into question is, well, he has to protect Jacqueline too. It's like, I don't know if you do. I think if you're John, you can rightly assume that you're the target. And frankly, Jacqueline being on that jury isn't the worst thing in the world for you.
It's also a little weird how people have not been trying to target Jacqueline. Like, Natalie, her tunnel vision, like, she probably should have taken out Jacqueline if she had the chance.
And then, of course, if he wins immunity, he could just, then he protects Jacqueline easily. Or the other move, if he really wanted to be ballsy, is let it be known you're playing your idol, and most people would assume you are, and then just play for Jacqueline. But, so let's get into this because we've been dancing around it. Predictions for next week. There was a preview at the end of the episode. At first I had not seen it, but thanks to our friends on Twitter, I found a way to watch the tail end of CBS's airing of it, which meant I had to watch like 9 commercials in a row or something. It looks like we might be talking about a medevac for next week, and now the question is this legit or is this a red herring?
I think it might be legit, because like they're talking, like, my impression was this looked like it might be some kind of leg injury, and they're talking x-rays, and the person they're talking about is the kind of person you probably wouldn't want to mess around with a leg injury. Like, so, if this is true, that means there's now only 2 more tribal councils where you can get rid of people. And that suddenly makes John's path to victory even easier.
Mm-hmm. And it also could change the dynamics of how aggressive Baylor wants to get, that sort of thing. Like, yeah. Now, maybe it means that Natalie then does get some power, and it's Baylor.
Also, should we just say it's Missy who seems to be...
Yeah. So, the question is, do we think Missy is leaving due to Medivac, as the preview is making us suggest? I know, there's people on our Twitter account speaking. I think John was one of them, posting from our account, or at the very least retweeting from it, that they think it's a red herring, that Survivor wouldn't show it if it was that. They'd be a little more ambiguous with who the player was. My counter to that is they showed Eric looking like he might get medevaced in the final episode, prior to the final episode of Karen Ramon, and that's how that episode led off. And I'd say, I think you were kind of getting at this. You were saying more diplomatically, like that's not the kind of person you want to. My thing is more like, I'm not seeing Missy as the person to tough it out. I think she's very upset that she's this close, but really, if they're talking x-rays, she's probably in a lot of pain. I think Missy is piecing out. I think she was already looking ahead at the final 7 days, like, oh God, how am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. She's not going to mess around with, a broken leg or whatever. The question then is, why we're assuming leg is they mentioned x-rays and she had her knee up when they were talking about that. But the accident itself looks like she's smashing herself in the face. So then if they're talking about x-rays for a broken nose, whatever. Broken noses can wait. Those aren't something you need to get to right away. I've broken my nose and I never got anything done to it. It was a nice clean break down the middle.
Did not know that.
Yeah, sports injury. It sounds tougher until you realize I was playing the outfield in baseball. And I caught it with my face instead of the glove. But, she's not holding anything to her face, so I think we can rule that out, unless that shot is from something else. So then we have the question, if Missy is hurt and medic is suggesting that she should go, are you really putting your stock on, no, Missy's toughing this one out? No, she's gone. Especially because I never truly believed that Missy intends to go all the way to the end. Her entire goal in life seems to be propping up Baylor, and she can, in her mind, maybe do that better from a jury box. I don't think she could, because the more she pumps up Baylor, the less people like Baylor. Now, maybe she did intend to go to the end where she would just spend the entire final tribal council talking about how amazing her daughter is. I guess, besides the fact that nobody likes her, that was another reason why Missy could never win, because I don't think she would try to win. So, for predictions for next week, I think it's Missy is a medevac, and that's it. I don't think there's a vote out. Now, if there is a vote out, I think that's when the idols start getting in the way, and you just have to punt on the decision, and it's Keith. What do you think? Do you have a thought?
I think there might be an outside chance, say, the only way John isn't winning this season is if he gets voted out next week, and I think the only way that happens is if he targets Natalie, and Natalie plays her idol, and takes out John.
And I will say, if that happens, I'll be thrilled. I don't need to be right about this. I would love it if Natalie won.
Also, we don't know when. It's just one episode next week, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because the finale's on a Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know. It just feels like at this point they're probably going to just do the. I bet they're going to have Missy medevac, and then they'll still have a vote out, because it looks like it could have been the
reward challenge.
Yeah.
I think
because there was kind of an obstacle course type thing.
My thought there is now you're down to 4 people for the finale, but that's not unheard of. And then, for one, it could still be a final 2. And the other thing is they've done it where they've entered with 4 and had a reward challenge for an advantage in the final immunity challenge. So there's ways to space, particularly when you consider that they had to lock 2 people off at the beginning of the season. So maybe they'd already been planning some spacing. So that's not out of the question. And certainly that would be preferable. An entire episode dedicated to Missy's Medivac would probably be worse than an entire episode dedicated to Julie's quit. And if that happens, John and I have some killer filler content planned, so maybe you should almost hope for it. And with that in mind, John will be back next week, and we are actually hoping to get some guests, and I don't mean guest host. Thank you very much, Billy, for filling that role in, but more just a guest segment. We've been planning this for a while, but we've, in typical John and Andy style, too lazy to do it. Let us know what you think about the various stuff we've had. Let us know if you prefer hearing 2 Canadian voices to John's crazy American accent. You can do that on our Twitter account. That's Purple Rock Pod. You can send us an email, purplerockpodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow us on our blog at purplerockpodcast.wordpress.com. Subscribe and comment on iTunes. Thanks for coming on again. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
Theme music!